And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Pinstripe Prospects Podcast. We have reached a milestone, episode number 20 of season number 2, and we're happy that you're with us here tonight as we get to talk about live baseball. Well, sort of, because baseball is coming back. It was made official on Tuesday that spring training can open up on July 1st, and the regular season will get underway July 23rd, 24th, 60 games, 66 days. We're going to get into everything involved in the process, get you all the details. We have so many people from the site here to talk about it tonight. We got a jam-packed list of guests. And of course, later on, get into more Yankee non-drafted free agents and have a little fun along the way. We want to remind you, of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros. Follow us on Instagram as well, Pinstripe Pros. Like us on Facebook. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Please hit the subscribe button. Give us a rating. We hope it's 5 stars. We want to hear from you what topics you want us to talk about. Any guests you want us to have on. We're happy to hear from you as well. We just want your feedback. You can subscribe also on any other podcast place. Wherever you get your podcasts are, chances are we're on it. And remember, you can also sign up for our Dugout membership program to get all of our premium footage. But we'll get into more of that later. But for right now, I want to bring in our guests for the show. Of course, I always have my co-host and partner in crime, James O'Connell, here. James, how you been?
We're back, man. Better in recent days. Just a week ago, we were talking about how we were kind of pessimistic a season would happen, or if we really even wanted a season to happen. We're here, and there's nothing more I'm happier about than a baseball season coming. 60 games. We'll get into all the details, but all in all, doing a lot better than it was a week ago. How about you, Ricky?
Doing pretty good. It's hot out, but that would just mean it's time for baseball, so that makes it make even more sense. We also have 2 other members of our team that you'll hear from tonight. Matt Jarrell is here. Matt, how you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks, Ricky. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Psyched to talk real baseball. Feels like it's been a while since we've had, actual MLB content to cover, so should be good. I read that we would have hit the midpoint of the season this week, so we've missed a lot of baseball, but it's nice to know that the game is finally back, and we'll get back to doing what we love to do around here.
Having the All-Star game at Dodger Stadium would have been pretty cool too. I mean, that's one thing I think you miss out on this year. I think that just the history of that ballpark and everything else. So that also is a sad reminder, even though we're reaching at least live baseball pretty soon. And Alexis Farinacci is here and running our Instagram page and doing a great job with that. Alexis, how are you?
Doing well. We've got live baseball returning, so I think it's a good day for baseball fans and people covering it overall.
Absolutely, and we'll get into an interview that Alexis did. You'll be able to check out on the site with your Dugout membership program later on in the show, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. So let's get right into what's going on with baseball. I'm going to give you the basic rule changes, and then we'll dive into some more detailed ones as the conversation goes on. So you'll hear some to start, and then we'll dive into some ones. I'm sure some of our guests as well are going to chime in on those as they move on. So as they talk about it, we'll talk about it as well. So the basic rule changes are, if you said 60 games, 66 days, implementation of DH in both leagues. Extra innings are going to start with a runner on second base, but we have to do it, I guess. No limits on... Oh, and Rob Pimpsner is here, too, the founder of Pinstripe Prospects. So you'll hear Rob, too, throughout the show. But him and I both hate that rule. No limits on position players pitching. Pitchers can have a wet rag in their pocket, a substitute for licking fingers, a.k.a. I guess you could call this the Mike Pelfrey rule. But we can go with that. And 3 batter minimum for a pitcher still stands. So let's go into that. We'll go into this brief portion of the rules, and we'll go throughout. So Matt, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts, at least on that set of rules?
Yeah, it should be interesting. I think it seems like the idea of pitchers hitting in baseball is ending, not with a bang, but with a whimper. Did not think that this was going to come up this soon. I know that the word around the league is that with the next CBA after the 2021 season, it was most likely going to be built in that pitchers would no longer be hitting. But now we're going to see, all DH for both leagues on a large scale for the first time. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see. I know there are a lot of National League fans who are kind of purists in this regard and are going to be sad to see the DH come to the National League. But I think the fact remains that pitchers are worse at hitting these days than they've ever been before. From a pure entertainment standpoint, I think it makes more sense to have the DH universally. So I'm interested to see, what the game is going to look like now that we have one set of rules across the entire sport. I think the National League is pretty much the last professional league on earth that was using that had elected not to start using the DH. So I'm going to have my eye on that. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how National League teams adjust, which teams are in the best position to adjust to this rule change. And that should be one of what are going to be many interesting factors at play in this short and unique season.
As far as those rules go, I have a little bit of experience with the runner on second rule, having worked for the Tampa Tarpons and the Fort Myers Mighty Muscles, formerly known as the Fort Myers Miracle. We started a few games that went into extra innings with that runner on second. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of it either. I don't really think it speeds up the game as much as they would like it to. I think you saw in some instances, you still went into 14, 15 innings later because the teams were either getting that person out at home or whatever the situation might have been. There were some times where it took advantage and you were done in the 10th or 11th inning. But overall, I think we stick with the normal rule of no runners on. Let's play baseball the way it's always been played.
Yeah, I hate that rule too. And just because I think I like it in the minors just because you got to keep the pitchers healthy. There's only a certain amount of pitchers that go each day. It just makes too much sense there. Not in the majors. We don't need to resort to this kind of stuff. Like we had all the talk about during the week before this broke about how there was going to be a player that can substitute back in and there's a chance to get a game and a tie. Baseball is not meant for ties. We keep playing until we figure out who wins. That's just the way it goes. We don't need these crazy rules unless it's even. I mean, I buy that for the World Baseball Classic, but at least it's not turning the 60-game season into a sideshow.
What's funny is this holds a runner on second rule at extra innings. I actually have experience with playing in it. I played travel baseball for my whole life growing up, and I think it's called like the Carolina rule. It's called some weird rule.
It's the international rule.
Is that what it's called? I don't know. I guess it was called a different name then, but like it stinks. It's horrible. It was horrible to play in. And I'd imagine it's going to be horrible to watch. It's going to be vomit-worthy to watch, especially when your favorite team is on the brink of losing and there's a runner on second already before you even you get on the mound. Not a fan of it, but like I really don't know how much we can complain about things, given that we finally have reached a deal here. So if the trade-off here is having some dumb rule in extra innings, I'm not. If you want to look at it that way, I'm not too upset about it, but it does stink.
It sucks. It's a stupid rule, but I get why they're instituting it for this year.
For sure.
And don't want people out there longer than they have to in a short season. And, with the virus, the pandemic, you want to get the games done as quickly as possible. So I understand that. But when it comes down to it, it's a stupid rule. Let's just make sure it ends here and is not implemented in the next CBA or next year or anything. It needs to end at this season, and that's it.
Yeah, you cannot have any of these short situations turn into the CBA going forward. It's something you try for this year just to get through this year, and then we hopefully go back to this similar game for the 162. But, of course, we all know the owners and players probably still don't really like each other, so nothing, I think, really changes at that regard. We'll get into that a little bit later. A couple other things in terms of safety. Getting a lot of these. Chris Cotillo did a great job today from masslive.com, formerly of SB Nation, did a really good job getting all the details. So we're trying to go mainly off his Twitter feed for that regard. No pregame exchange of lineup cards. Social distancing encouraged on the fields. Interesting. Pitchers bring their own rosin bag to the mound. Non-playing personnel wear masks in the dugout or bullpen at all times. You can't spit, but you can chew gum. And you can't fight. I don't know if that's the Houston Astros rule, but so you can't fight. Temperature symptom checks twice per day. COVID tests every other day during spring, regular season, and postseason. Antibody testing about once a month. And high-risk players can opt out. I think I want to dive into the health portion of this real quick because we've had a lot of COVID outbreaks over the past weekend. Phillies camp, I know, had some. Blue Jays camp. Just before we went on the air to start recording this, it was reported that Charlie Blackmon has tested positive for coronavirus. It just seems that the specter of the virus obviously is going to loom over this. And I think that's the big question is, okay, with now having spring training in your own facility at your stadium, like the Yankee Stadium, the Mets at Citi Field, so on and so forth, without having the bubble, which the NBA is going to the bubble, the NHL is doing the hub city. I think the big question we're going to find out, and any one of you could start off with this, is having it in your own stadiums, yes, without fans, but not having it in one central location. Is this going to work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be tough. And I think, the thinking on this from what things looked like back in April to now has completely turned on its head. So, coronavirus wise, up here in the Northeast in New York and where I'm at in Boston, we were hit so hard in the first few weeks of the pandemic, and now things have kind of leveled out to the point where I think the Yankees and Mets probably feel pretty good at this point about holding spring or summer training, if you will, at their home ballparks. We have other areas of the country right now where things are not so great. Major outbreaks in Texas and Florida and Arizona. And, there are plenty of teams in those markets that I think are going to have a much tougher time keeping their players healthy. I think going forward, exactly what you just touched on, Ricky, if you're assuming that teams are going to play in their home ballparks, you got to travel to and from with, teams, support staff, whoever else needs to travel. People are probably going to get sick. And there might come a time once the season gets going that the league has to reckon with a large outbreak of cases. If we're already seeing players coming down with this and, camp hasn't even begun yet, once we actually get into camp, chances are things are going to get a lot worse. So, are we going to be able to complete a schedule? Are we going to be able to play baseball into the fall when some experts have suggested that things could get worse across the board once again? I think there's a lot kind of left unanswered. And while we're all happy at this point that, we're going to have baseball, I think, completing the season, getting to the postseason is another question entirely. And we may have to face some difficult realities in the weeks and months to come.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. It's going to happen. People are going to contract this virus with Major League Baseball resuming, particularly in Major League Baseball. It even happened, not to go back to golf, a lot of us going back to golf, but even on the PGA Tour, I believe we already have a second positive test. And golf is as socially distanced as it can get. Not sure where these players are going after, but I mean, it's going to happen where a player or multiple players are going to contract this virus. I'm sure the Players Association agreed to some sort of health and safety protocol. I know they did. I don't know if I'm sure they did. I know they did. I'd imagine they have to have a pretty good idea of what will happen and what measures will be taking after a player or multiple players test positive for this virus. So let's hope they have a good idea of what to do. Let's hope they know what they're doing. Let's hope they're actually in contact with health departments and stuff like that. That's really all we can ask for at this moment.
Alexis, before I get to you, I want to give some. I found Marley Rivera's tweets interesting also on this. We talk about the fighting. All buffet-style food spreads are prohibited, and duties handled by the bat boys or ball boys and girls will be performed by existing club staffs. Those are some of your quirky operations manual things, according to Marley Rivera of ESPN. But Alexis, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can speak on Florida. I think it's a smart decision for the Mets and Yankees both to make the decision to go back to New York. I think here in Florida, not only are we dealing with an increase in the COVID cases, but we're hitting our rainy season. I think about every afternoon, it about feels like we're in the middle of a hurricane. You got wind, you got rain. That's episode for tarp pulls on tarp pulls and a lot of delays and potential for double headers that I'm not sure the season schedule even has time for. So I think the Yankees and Mets just making that decision to go ahead and go back to New York is probably smart on the situation of the cases and the weather. Talking to a buddy earlier, I think closed dome stadiums are going to be the winners, the Marlins, the Rays. You're looking at the fact that they're not going to have to necessarily deal with the climate and the weather. And that could be an option for other teams if too many games get rained out. Do they look to Tampa? Do they look to Miami to maybe play a couple games on the road there?
I think the one we all were worried about when we first heard about everything going on was the Blue Jays. Training in Florida, obviously with the case in Florida going up, and then playing games in Canada. The whole going from Canada to the United States with everything going on with that travel. I mean, we all started to wonder, hey, would the Blue Jays be allowed to play at home this year? So that, I think, still is a big question mark as well. With the Yankees, let's say, have to play Toronto somewhere else, I think would be a storyline to keep an eye on.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I remember hearing that there's a potential that they're going to be training in Toronto, but then they'd be playing all of their home games at Dunedin, home of the Dunedin Blue Jays, their Florida State League single A affiliate. So I think that's an option they're still looking at right now, is to play in Dunedin.
So before we get into the other big roster ideas and whole other changes that were being made, I want to get into a bigger discussion on one topic. And I think when I heard today that baseball was on its way back, and we heard last night a little bit that Manfred was going to impose the 60-game season, I felt like even back when Manfred and Tony Clark had that meeting a week ago, I wasn't that excited. And it's not that I'm losing interest in the sport. I'm a big baseball fan. I love writing about the game. I love writing here at Pinstripe Prospects. But they're just not an excitement. Everything coming back, to me, just feels forced. And you know the owners and players, like I mentioned before, don't get along with each other. You know there's still an axe to grind on both sides. You know it's going to affect free agency next year regardless. It just feels like we're at a short term where everybody just stops hating each other and we just pretend that we like each other for about 60 days. And all in all, yes, fans will come back. We're suckers. We all like baseball. We'll tune in. We'll watch games with no fans because it's baseball. We've had this conversation on past episodes. So James, I know you'll chime in as well, but I want to get Matt and Alexis's points on this too. Has your interest in baseball changed with all the arguing and the back and forth and who's right, who's wrong? It just feels like it's changed for a lot of people.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And if the question here is, are you less excited than you were, kind of in the fall, not the fall, in the winter or in the spring about a new baseball season starting? The answer would be yeah. I was definitely more excited in the spring or in any previous spring before baseball season that was about to happen. And I think that is because of the kind of the knot that's been in everyone's stomachs. Or are we going to have a season? Are we going to have a season? Something's going on in Manfred, something's going on in Tony Clark, something's going on with everyone. The negotiations were ugly, that's for sure. Nobody enjoyed watching that or reading about it. It was so just disgusting, the way it happened and the way that everyone reacted to it. I don't know. It didn't sit right with me. I think even a week ago, Ricky, we were somewhat content with no season happening. The season, of course, is very excited about the season happening, but does it feel the same? No, it doesn't feel the same. I'm very excited about it, but it's just not. I don't have that excitement that, man, I get to watch Garrett Cole on the mound in pinstripes for the first time. I should be a lot more excited than I am. And I do think that's a testament or attest to the negotiations and the way that went down.
No, I kind of feel less excited for baseball now, and part of the reason is because of this bickering from the owners and the players and everything, and the fact that they're stringing along the minor leagues. And minor league baseball has been a big part of my life for 21 years, and seeing what's happening right now, and seeing how MLB is trying to gut 25% of the minors, and now there's going to be no minor league season, but they have yet to officially announce it. Just stringing everyone along, hoping. It just really zapped my enthusiasm for the sport. And quite frankly, I don't know if I'm going to watch any Major League Baseball games this year. There's just so many other things that I could be doing with my time. And that's just sad because I was one of the biggest baseball fans around.
Yeah, I think for me, I would say, I don't think I've lost that excitement. I think it was starting to get frustrating, last week when it was just a proposal, then a denial, a proposal, and a denial. It almost felt like, okay, are we going to see baseball this year? And, I'm currently still friends with some minor leaguers, and all they've been told is be ready, be ready, be ready. and there's no official word on their season. Will they get the extended Florida spring training? They still don't know. So I think for me, I'm still excited about baseball. I think it's something to look forward to, something to watch on TV. At this point, it gives us more stuff to cover as well with actually having live baseball back. So I would say, I haven't lost that excitement. I think it's kind of almost a relief that, there's an agreement, there's going to be some kind of baseball. I think, postseason and the World Series are going to be weird. I think they're always going to kind of have an asterisk next to whoever wins it this year, just based off it being a short season. But I think it's still something to be excited about, the fact that we do have baseball coming back.
And that's where not having expanded postseason is going to hurt in that regard. And I believe Bob Nightingale of USA Today had this, or somebody had this. If you go to a 60-game, like the halfway point a couple of years ago, the Pirates were a half game behind the Cardinals, and then they were 22 games back at the end of the season. So you could have a case where a team like the Pirates or the Marlins or the Royals or some team that wasn't supposed to be good, if you're the Yankees and you get off to a bad start, you're stuck with only 10 teams getting in. So with the quirky 16-team playoff not happening, a lot of these games are going to bring that excitement back of, guess what? Most, if not all, these games are going to feel like semi-postseason games in a way. So that's going to help the sport at least gain some of the excitement back. But at the same time, it leaves no margin for error if you're a Yankees, if you're a Dodgers, if you're an Astros, if you're one of these boomer bust contenders. You've got to get off on the ground running. And then from an on-field perspective, that helps the Yankees, because it sounds like from all the reports that Aaron Judge and Aaron Hicks could even be back, and the Yankees could, dare I say, be fully healthy, knock on wood, by the time the season starts. Paxton too. We kind of knew with Paxton was coming back.
Dude, if Aaron Judge isn't back by July 24th, what are we talking about with that? If we're about to get into a discussion that I'm happy to get into because we finally have something to talk about. But if Aaron Judge isn't healthy after having a cracked rib from last September, that's when he sustained the injury last September. What goes on then? Everyone's going to question this guy. We're going to question durability and everything. It's going to be a whole. The first thing we talk about when we get back to baseball is Aaron Judge's health. Aaron Judge better be healthy by July 24th or July. Aaron Judge better be healthy now. If he's not, we have monster issues and monster conversations to have. Yeah, I can't even stand the thought of him not being healthy.
Well, wasn't the news that he was healthy and he'll be ready for the start of the spring training?
I saw there's optimism that he would be healthy, and that word honestly kills me, because as a watcher of the Yankees my entire life, and especially last two seasons, optimism is never a good thing, in my opinion. I remember he was supposed to be back, got hit in the hand against the Royals 2018. Oh, he'll be back in 3 weeks. He didn't swing a bat for 2 months or a month at one point. So optimism is never what I'm looking for. I'm looking for definitely will be back. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, Jim Bowden from The Athletic had the Yankees are optimistic that both Judge and Hicks should be ready and healthy.
Don't like that word. I would like a different word.
Ricky, I want to return to your previous question for just a moment because I really liked the way you framed that question. And I think it's important to differentiate between excitement and interest in the sport, the game of baseball, and excitement and interest in Major League Baseball, MLB. For me, there's a real discrepancy between those two things. My appetite for baseball is as ravenous as it's ever been. I've been getting up at 5:30 a.m. to watch the CPBL and the KBO. I'm all in on Uni Lions fandom right now. I've been having a great time. And just having that outlet of watching baseball has been really great for me. But as far as my excitement about Major League Baseball, that is certainly way, way, way down from what it was last spring. And the major reason is because at this point, I'm not confident that the folks who are in charge of baseball care about the game and want to grow the game. I'm not confident about that. And it's because of the way that they handled themselves in the negotiations. It's because, as Rob mentioned, the way that they've dealt with minor league contraction. It's because of the way they handle things like blackout policies around the country, access to highlights, making sure that young kids have the opportunity to get involved with baseball, to get excited about baseball, the way that they treat player personalities, players speaking out, players expressing themselves. On all of these things, I feel like the brass of baseball doesn't care. And they don't care about growing the game. They don't care about the long-term health of the game. They only care about short-term profits. Interested to hear what you all think about that. But to me, that's been the real gaping wound that's been exposed by the last 3 months in baseball, is that we can't be confident that the people in charge really want to grow our game, want to have the game be a popular sport in America for generations to come.
100% agree. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think what we've seen here is that the leadership in charge of baseball, the owners of Major League Baseball teams, have proven that they do not care about the sport of baseball. They do not care about the growth of the game. They do not care about its long-term ability to stay in the public consciousness. They've literally publicly admitted that they cannot go up against football and basketball and all these other sports in October because of ratings. So why should people become fans of the sport if the people that are owning these teams, that are running this sport, are not fans?
Well, they pretty much admitted that they can't compete with football and basketball, because they could have made the effort to be the sport that's 3 weeks ahead of everybody else and had the limelight to themselves. Instead, they allowed NASCAR to get it first and James's PGA Tour golf to get it first. And people have been watching that because, like Alexis said, we all love sports. We want sports to happen. We'll turn on something, just we'll turn on a UFC match or a boxing match just because it's on and it's not a rerun of something. And the fact that baseball said, you know what, we can't really get the postseason the way we want it, because regardless, it used to be baseball would compete and say, you know what, we're going to try to be better than them. It just feels like they've given up.
It is. They have given up, and it's sad. And it really hurts people like me who entered the sport fandom for baseball through the minor leagues and everything. It's just like they've pretty much given up on growing their own game and building new fan bases. The average age of a Major League Baseball fan is 57. And right now, the only way that gets younger is if the older fans die. And that is just a sad commentary.
Jesus. That cannot be the only way? Just as the older fans die?
That is the only way that the average age gets lowered right now, because Major League Baseball does not care. They constantly hurt themselves. They shoot themselves in the foot. They should be embracing these YouTubers. They should be embracing TikTok. They should be embracing all these online content creators. But instead, they're enforcing copyright restrictions that's actually against copyright law, because it's covered under fair use. So it's stopping these people from monetizing their videos and everything, because they're chasing a short-term buck and giving up long-term gain. If you want to make money on TV with ratings, you need the 18 to 34 demographic. If the average age of your watcher is 57, that is just sad and pathetic. And if you're not reaching out to those young people, you're killing your own TV show, your own sport. And unfortunately, that is what MLB owners are doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is no inherent reason why baseball should be less popular with young people than football and basketball. People say, oh, baseball's slow. Oh, don't tell me that. The most popular sport in the world is soccer. I love soccer. Soccer is a slow game, large stretches of time without lots of action like you have in basketball and football. Baseball needs to become more attractive for the younger audience. And Rob, you hit the nail on the head right there. Giving access to the social media apps, making baseball more accessible needs to be a priority right now. And for this current administration, this set of owners, it's just not a priority.
Yeah, I mean, what it comes down to is, when I was in school, because I have a degree in sports management, and we actually did a study. There's actually more minutes of action in a baseball game there is in a football game. So anyone saying that football's more action-packed is just bullshitting you. But what it comes down to is baseball just doesn't give a shit about promoting their own sport and growing their own fan base. And that is what's killing the game.
Well, I want to take a little more optimistic approach than you guys. I do think, especially last season, you did see some more young fans kind of. I don't know if everyone here, I'd imagine, pays attention to Twitter. You do see a good amount of young fans on Twitter. I think the game was growing last year, and sure, Major League Baseball does not do a great job of marketing the stars. They don't allow people to use their videos on social media unless you have some sort of whatever rights that was. They could do a lot better of a job than they do, but I think the sport of baseball, the physical sport, will always remain strong and will always attract fans because at the end of the day, you're a parent, you're entering your kid in Little League. That's just something you do for the most part. So I think just the physical sport will always remain optimistic, will always remain strong. But the people in charge at Major League Baseball, and eventually we get Rob Manfred out because he's going to be out at some point. I don't really see how much longer he's allowed to be commissioner or whatever his contract. I don't really know everything behind that, but we got to get someone in there who knows how to grow the game, and just to take advantage of all the younger fans on Twitter and with technology in general. You can't. Some of the restrictions they have are nonsense, but I definitely do think that there's some more optimism for this game growing than just based off of last year than there was in years past.
So we have a great you can check out our Dugout membership program. We have a lot of good things on the website that, of course, you can only access through our Dugout membership program, where you have player interviews, features. We got our great Coaches Insight series. It's not just great because I run it, but we have some great insight from the draft picks and non-drafted free agents from their coaches that they've had. We have a great interview going up with players as well, so you hear from the draft picks themselves. So it's a reminder, of course, you can access it for $5.50 a month, $40 a year. So you get all the great content. You get to try it for 30 days free with I Miss Baseball as the promo code. And let's face it, we all miss baseball, but it's coming back. So we won't miss it for too long. But if you want to try it for free. We highly recommend it, and we think that you'll enjoy it. So be sure to sign up for our Dugout membership program today. Now let's get back to the action. Let's talk about this whole taxi squad concept. We didn't really get to go into it on the last show because it wasn't really fully developed. But there's many different rules involving roster changes. Of course, you can take up to 3. Jason Stark from The Athletic had you can take up to 3 taxi squad players on the road. If there's 3, though, one must be a catcher. Teams must submit 60-man player pool names by Sunday at 3 Eastern. So you're going to have some ideas of who the taxi squad guys might be then. You also have them maybe train at within a certain miles of the stadium. So you could see Scranton. You could see Trenton. Rob, I know, is thrown out there, and I've kind of agree with him. Staten Island, I think, should be an option. You're only a ferry and a subway ride from the stadium. So I don't see how that's not a better option than going 89 miles out to Scranton or going to Trenton. Like, Trenton, I think, would be another one, but I think Staten Island makes too much sense. And I think the interesting thing is when you go with the taxi squad, and you look at, taking it from a full organizational standpoint, the Yankees are very deep in terms of their farm system, but it's a lot at the lower levels more than the upper levels. And I think what's going to be fascinating, and I want us all to chime in on this, you look at the teams going to be the AL East teams and the NL East teams. And you have a case where you now face the Rays, not just the Tampa Rays Major League team, you're facing some of their top farm players too. Facing some of the Braves' top farm players too, the tax squad. Now, you only can have 30 players to start, and then it will get lower as it goes on. There's a trade deadline. I still can't believe there's a trade deadline, but there is one August 31st. And the roster will get down by September 15th. But still, you have the Rays farm system, the Braves farm system. There's some really good farm systems on some really good competitive teams that you're now going to have to compete with as well. And I think that also creates a new combination major minor league wrinkle into everything.
With the expanded rosters this year, I expect, a couple of guys that probably would not have gotten a shot at a big league job this year with a lot of these teams to get a shot. And that means the doors are open for guys like Debbie Garcia and the Yankees and et cetera. But to talk about the taxi squad a little bit, what it comes down to is Major League Baseball set a 100-mile radius for teams to find a place for their taxi squads to work out. Mets will probably use Brooklyn, which is part of the New York Penn League. They own the team. They run the stadium, so very likely for that to happen. Staten Island makes the most sense for the Yankees, just like Brooklyn makes the most sense for the Mets for several reasons. One, because it's in the city limits. It's the closest you can get. And the team has control over everything there. They could do whatever they want with the stadium. Everything will be closed off to the public. And not only that, you're dealing with the same municipalities. You're dealing with the same governor. You're dealing with the same mayor. You're dealing with the same political landscape, and it's less for you to have to worry about, if there's a COVID outbreak in another city or something. Because if there's a COVID outbreak in New York again, it's going to be the same in Staten Island and in the Bronx. So it helps in that way. And what we've seen right now is there's a lot of speculation of where they could go. They could go to Staten Island. They could go to Trenton. Staten Island is the closest. Trenton's about 75 miles away. Scranton's about 120 miles away. Someone also brought up with Hartford, which is 105 miles away, which is like just outside of that radius. So there's options. The other option also Hudson Valley, New York, which is another option of the Hudson Valley Renegades, which is in that 100-mile radius as well. So there's plenty of options there for the Yankees to use, but I think Staten Island makes the most sense because you're dealing with the same municipalities, the same governor, the same everything, same health protocols that you would in the Bronx, and it's closer, and the facilities are modern AA facilities, so it is on par what you would get at a AA stadium in 2020. But as far as the taxi squads go, you're looking at an additional 30 men. So I'm expecting it's going to be the guys on the 40-man roster plus 20 additional guys. So you have the guys on the 20-man roster and 20 additional guys that would probably make up your AAA team. And so these are like the Zach Zenners, the Ben Rudas, the Trey Ambergis of the world. Domingo Acevedo is another one. Those are the types of guys to be on that taxi squad, and I think they'll get a real shot at playing MLB baseball this year.
Gives whole new meaning to the Scranton shuttle from years back. Now I just have a Scranton taxi squad. But I like that idea. I like that it gives other players an opportunity for sure. I mean, we talked about Davey Garcia and Clark Schmidt all spring. I mean, obviously now I think they get put in the limelight. There's many other players you could consider. They're guys maybe that can compete to maybe be on the squad, so you get a little internal competition in that regard. I think that'll make it even another different storyline to watch too. But the one thing that's interesting is the whole roster freeze being lifted, and I wonder, especially with the trade deadline, and I know I touched on this a little bit, but I want to dive in a little bit more. You guys know where I stand. I disagree. I don't think there should be a trade deadline. Look, you got 60 games. You should be able to go with the roster you have, because now you got a team that's bad for a month. Now they can sell and really not get anything back. What is the team going to give you for a month of one for a free agent? Like, let's say the Mets are bad, for example, and they trade Marcus Stroman for what? So another team gets him for a month. Like, to me, there's just stick with the rosters you have. I don't even know why we have a trade deadline. If we did, it honestly should have been you can trade from up until the roster freeze until the beginning of the season. After that, you're set.
Yeah, I agree. I think a trade deadline makes no sense.
Because it just sounds like the teams that stink are going to be the teams that try to be the ones that trade everybody for 3 cents on the dollar.
I don't think you'd even get anything.
Can't even get a pack of gum, which you could chew, but you can't even get a pack of gum. So that completes a whole other wrinkle into everything. I think that'll be something that's brought up as time goes on. I know we have so many other things we can get into, but I want to wrap up this topic. So anything that you guys want to chime in on that you've seen that you want to touch on, feel free to do so. I want to try to get on as many of these ideas and things that are being floated out there as possible. So everyone's started off something that we haven't gotten to that you want to discuss.
Rule 5.
There you go.
Discussed. There was many players were selected in the Rule 5 draft. And we've learned that the Rule 5 is going to be prorated. So players will have to stay on the rosters of their current team for 50 games, without being offered back to their club to be kept. So that means guys like Ronnie Garcia are likely gone for good. and which sucks because I really liked Ronnie Garcia. I thought he had a shot with the Yankees this year if he was going to be returned, but I think he's going to be a good part of that Detroit bullpen for this year.
From what I'm seeing now, interesting, and I'll let Alexis and Matt, you could chime in on what we missed out on too. Chandler Rome from the Houston Chronicle has an interesting thing. According to the operations manual, players must complete a COVID-19 education prior to spring training. It includes an educational video they must watch in the presence of team medical personnel, posters, handouts, and a class. So I guess the player's going back to school. But Matt and Alexis, feel free to chime in on anything we've missed or something that you want to touch on in terms of any new rules and all the procedures we're finding out.
Yeah, one question I'd just like to throw out to all of you that I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on is, given the taxi squad, the likelihood that players need to hit the injured list because of the long layoff, because of the disease, etc., is there a player in the Yankees farm system that you think is uniquely positioned to break out at the major league level this year that might not have had a chance to in a normal year? And I would say, let's say somebody besides Davey, because I think that's probably the obvious answer, but would love to hear perspectives on that.
Caleb Ort.
Good answer.
He's a guy that I think has the stuff to pitch in the majors as a mid-relief guy, and this is the perfect opportunity for him. And I think he's a guy that, could be something, when it comes to a mid-relief option. He's not going to be a closer. He's not going to be a seven-up man, but he's going to be a good mid-relief option, especially in a season like this. Another name, Brooks Kriske, someone I'm very high on. Those two guys, I think, have a good shot this year with the shortened season and expanded rosters.
To me, I think it just it benefits the mid-reliever, like Rob said, and also the utility player. Because depending on how many guys, whether it's through injury or what happens with the coronavirus, guys with multiple position flexibility are going to be of real high regard now more than ever. Because you're going to need guys maybe can slide into a different position here or slide in position here. Because let's face it, as much as people are going to complain on Twitter and Facebook, 60 games in 66 days, guys are still taking days off. Nobody's playing all 60 games as a position player. You might disagree with that, but that's just the way it goes. So you need guys that, hey, one day I can play first base, one day I can play shortstop, one day I can play the outfield. Position flexibility matters now more than ever.
Could this be the summer of Wade?
I feel like that's a band that we've been trying to get for multiple years, and maybe that band will finally go on tour.
Did you say Summer of Wade? Is in Tyler Wade?
See.
Well, I mean, he had a great spring for the most part, right? I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, we were pretty excited about Tyler Wade. Everyone's always excited about Tyler Wade, but we were especially excited about Tyler Wade coming into the season.
Well, if you looked at it, he's gotten more consistent at bats. He's gotten better. And
there's no one I'm more excited about than a full an August Gary Sanchez. He just usually absolutely tears it up in August, right?
Oh.
That's just his month. So we might have to deal with a bad Gary with it for the first week, but August Gary kicks into gear the next week, man.
But is August his May now?
Right. I guess let's hope not. Right. I want his August to be his August.
Well, James, you bring up a good point. We're not dealing with the cold start to the season. Remember how we always had to deal with that cold start, and that always affected the offense at the first couple of weeks.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. This is going to be interesting, man. I was going to say excited, but I don't know if I'm excited. I'm I don't know. Confused.
I think reading through all these things, everybody's pretty much somewhat confused on one way or another.
Right.
But I think ultimately that's just going to make it, as we find out more clarification, the schedule comes out. The schedule I think is going to be interesting too, because they're going to find out a schedule within 72 hours. I know Bob Nightingale reported that. Any thoughts on the schedule, how the Yankees stack up? What do we think here?
Well, I'll get to go with that. The Yankees, in my opinion, on paper, they're the best team in baseball. Let's just start there. I think they match up on paper, which is in baseball, as we know, is entirely different. They match up with everyone. They got the arms, they got the bats, they got the pen. They have the experience now. It's time. It is time. It's time for a World Series, or whatever this is, a half a World Series, whatever. However, screw it. If they win the World Series, it's a World Series. I mean, this at the end of the day, this is more difficult on a team like the New York Yankees, on a team like the Dodgers, on one of those teams who were absolute cinched locks to outlast teams for 162 games, no matter how badly injured they were or whatnot. This is more difficult on the Yankees. So if they win this World Series, if they win whatever we call this, in my opinion, it's more impressive than them winning an 162 game season, because there was no doubt the Yankees were going to outlast those teams and make the playoffs in some capacity. You could have a shitty 60 games in the blink of an eye. That's very possible. So I'd almost be more impressed if one of these top dogs come out and win a World Series. But if you see a team like the New York Mets or like one of these random teams come out absolutely on fire and win it all, then you could have a discussion like, well, this wasn't legit. Because at the end of the day, if you have a 60-game season last year, the Washington Nationals are the World Series champions. That's the luxury of an 162-game season. So it's not almost, it is a disadvantage for those top dogs. Needless to say, it's going to be interesting to watch.
I think this format benefits teams that have great bullpens. Because, yes, you have your starting pitching, but you're only getting, let's say the Yankees example, 12 starts out of Garrett Cole at most. Maybe you get 13 or 14, depending on if you want to use them in short rest. You got to clinch something. You go that route. But to me, I look at teams like the Rays, who love using relievers. I think this format benefits them tremendously, which gives them more of a shot. Albeit, I think the Yankees are the favorite. I think that's a possibility. I look at the Braves that went out and added Will Smith in free agency to put with Mark Melancon and Shane Green, and they have a bunch of young arms they can just continue to throw out there and call guys up and be that high-impact, late-inning reliever. There's guys there. You look at the Mets, albeit we don't know what their closing situation is, but you still have Diaz and Betances and Lugo. They have really good arms they could go to. I think this format, more than ever, it's not going to really be about what starters you have. It's going to be about really how many great relievers you have. And maybe towards the August 31st trade deadline, you're going to see a ton of relievers shipped back and forth, because I think more teams are going to go to the bullpenning and things like that, because, yes, rotation matters, but you're looking at this as a sprint now. It's completely different. You're not going to have starters built up right away to where they want to be, because they've just taken months off from spring training, having to rev back up again. So to me, the divisions could ultimately come down to whose bullpen stand up the test of time through 60 games.
Well, I'm going to play a little devil's advocate with you, Ricky, right now, because
sure,
honestly, I don't think the pitchers are as cold as you're thinking they are.
Mm-hmm.
They've all been doing bullpens and working out during the whole pandemic and everything. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it would take that much for them to get ramped back up. And when it comes down to, I think this could be really good for the Yankees if they get Garrett Cole. They're going to have James Paxton back. You got Tanaka. If those guys, take 5-6 innings a game, we're in really good shape. And I think the Yankees, especially in the early going when you have that 30-man roster, if I was the Yankees, I'd let give my big name relievers a break in the early going and let them ease into the season, and then for the playoffs, let them ramp it up. And I don't know, if you're the Yankees, would you go all out from the beginning? Because if we're looking at this, if it's 10 games against your division rivals and then 20 games against your NL division equals, who does this benefits the Yankees? Because I think the Yankees are definitely the strongest team in the AL East by far, and with this not being an agreement between the players and the teams, I'm expecting a considerable number of people to opt out of playing this year, especially on teams like Toronto, teams like Boston, and teams like Tampa Bay.
Okay, base that off of who the Yankees start off with. Again, we don't know the order of the games. You're starting off with the Orioles. You probably won't go all out and use your big time relievers because you might just blow the other team out of the ballpark. You might not have to. I think that also plays a dynamic into it. I think the Yankees are the favorite for sure, and I think that their rotation definitely stands out amongst the other teams in their division. But I do think the margin for at least a team like Tampa, I don't know how many will opt out on Tampa because they're still in a really good position. And I think they're a team that, and if this format can be creative, I think creativity will help them more. I think they're a tougher out over 60 than over 162. Like, I think that it's just about, I think, the tougher competition. Doesn't mean the Yankees can't win. I think they absolutely are the favorite. I just think there's going to be games where, let's say, you might start off with Tampa, Atlanta, the defending champions, Washington. You might have a series where you play Scherzer, Strasburg, Corbin. I mean, I don't know the order of the schedule, and I think that also could dictate how far out you go because who knows, you might be stuck end of the season, let's say, playing Washington and playing Scherzer, Strasburg, Corbin for a playoff spot. I mean, that's going to be the whole fascination of how the schedule looks.
I don't know if I'm a player on the Tampa Bay Rays, I'm taking a look at seeing what's going on in Florida in terms of COVID cases.
Oh yeah, that's totally the opt out for COVID is totally different. I'm saying in
opting out of
that
the season and not playing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when it comes down to, you also got to remember there's going to be a lot of players that are going to be playing for nothing because they got that advance.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the point?
Well, can't you say that for the Yankees too? I mean, there could be players in the Yankees that decide that.
Yes, but the Yankees also have the luxury of being in an area where COVID cases are rapidly declining.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I'm a player, I'm looking at that. It was like, all right, I get to play and everything. And then I look at, if I'm a player on Tampa Bay, you got COVID numbers increasing. I'm getting paid nothing or practically nothing. Why bother? I could just stay home with my family.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a fair point. I think that's a factor in the other divisions too. I mean, look at Texas with the Astros and the Rangers. That's going to be a question. Again, we're going to find out over the course of the next few weeks. That's going to be a case, I think, for every team that in these areas because teams also have to travel. I think that's where we bring up the whole point before with the whole should they have gone with the bubble, and it could be the end point. Will the postseason end up being in a quote unquote bubble? We don't know that either. I feel like that's going to be the way to go in the end. I mean, if you want to get the postseason in, just play it all at one spot.
I think that's a good point. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the neutral site for postseason end of the World Series is a very viable option that Major League Baseball is probably definitely going to take a look at. I think you look at come September, October, are cases declining in a certain area? Do you push games there? I think I agree with everybody when you say that, the Marlins, the Rays, they have a little bit of more concern on their hands, especially with the city of Tampa going to mandatory masks out in public. How does that affect baseball? How does that affect their players on a daily basis, not only at the stadium but outside of it? So I think you could look at a neutral territory having to be used. Do you put the Rays in one of their other minor league areas that are out of state and have them play? Same with the Marlins.
Yeah, I think the league as a whole is going to have to be really flexible throughout this entire process. And to be quite honest, I don't have very high hopes that they can pull this entire thing off from start to finish, because I think any hope I had that the league would respond and rise to the occasion was totally torpedoed over the last 3 months, watching them fumble through this labor strife and this negotiation process. These are completely unique times, crazy times that require ingenuity and flexibility and the ability to just think outside the box and put aside, comfort and short-term considerations. And I just don't trust that the clubs can actually come together and make it happen. So I'm hoping that the situation health-wise across the country remains under control enough that we can play all these games and we can get through a full season. But if things do take a turn for the worse, I don't know how the league's going to respond.
So I think that'll be a big thing to keep an eye on. To me, Dodger Stadium makes too much sense. I mean, we'll see what the cases are in California, but the ultimate way to make up for not having an All-Star game is, hey, you guys can have the entire postseason at Dodger Stadium. And I think you can build a storyline around it like, hey, we had to have the postseason in this iconic ballpark. To me, I think that just makes – they've talked about in the past. I mean, it would be bad for not having your home field advantage in a way, and maybe you come up with quirky rules for that. We know the NBA tried to do that, came up with quirky ways to make up for not having home court in Disney World. But to me, I just think if you want to guarantee this postseason happening, you've got to move it somewhere else because we don't know if that second wave, you need to make it as close to guarantee. And I think eventually you're going to have to really consider that point that you're going to have to move your postseason somewhere else.
I feel like it goes without saying here that the neutral site would have to be not a team in the postseason. That's been, it can't be a Dodgers team in the Dodgers in the postseason. I think that's not there.
But you could have a thing. I remember from back then they had, if the Dodgers were in it, let's say they had to play in like Petco or something in San Diego or something like that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
That'd be a great neutralizing park, Petco.
Sure.
You'd really find out because you don't really have, that's the ultimate pitcher friendly ballpark. So that would be the ballpark itself, I think, could play a unique factor. So there may different things, and we'll again dive into each one. As the weeks go on, as we get ready for Major League Baseball. There's so much that we can get into. We're going to get into all this over the next few weeks as we prepare for actual baseball to start. I want to though spend a little bit of time, and then we'll wrap up with final thoughts from everybody on some more Yankees non-drafted free agents. We had a couple other players signed since we last were on the air. Yankees got a couple outfielders from the Big Ten, Elijah Dunham from Indiana and Aaron Polensky from Nebraska. I reached out to Indiana to get some thoughts on Elijah Dunham. Elijah Dunham, they give us some quotes from their head coach, Coach Mercer. Said Elijah's one of the best workers I've ever coached, a world-class competitor, and an even person. I wish him all the best in his professional journey and will be his number one fan. He's one of the best workers I've ever coached, a world-class competitor, an incredible man of faith. His hit tool is real, a great feel for the strike zone, and the ability to develop into a solid to average to above average defender at first base. Interesting, but Dunham was one of the top college seniors on a lot of people's boards, so that made sense. They got a lefty, Clay Aguilar from Houston. I know Max Goodman from SI.com brought up the connection. Went to Deer Park High School, same spot as Andy Pettitte. So that was another fascinating storyline from Max. And Blaine Abeda from right-handed pitcher from Nevada, which, Alexis, you got to talk with an interview for our site along with his family. Give us a little bit on that and what the readers can expect when they check that out.
Yeah, so like you said, I had the opportunity to talk to Blaine and his family this past weekend. He was a really, really nice guy, really down to earth. His family was super sweet, Initially, he thought the interview was just going to be him, and then he messaged me probably about hour or so in advance of the interview and said, hey, do you mind if my family jumps in? And after doing some research and seeing how much of a family-oriented guy he is and how much his family means to him, I was like, absolutely. I wasn't going to say no to that at all. So I think, we got a unique player in Abeda in that this would have only been his second or third year pitching. He actually was a catcher all through high school, and then in junior college switched over to the position of pitching. So he comes to the Yankees as a right-handed pitcher with catching experience. So, you'll get to hear a little bit in the interview about how he feels like his catching experience benefits his pitching and that he already knows how to read batters from behind the plate, now taking that advantage to the mound. I think he's going to be a really cool guy for the Yankees to bring on. He's got some good stuff, a fastball, curveball, changeup, slider. Just seems like an exciting player, and talking to him, he said it still doesn't feel real to him. His parents described it as, they remember him playing Little League and community ball and him saying that he's going to be a big league player one day. And his mom began to tear up and get emotional and saying, now he's living that dream.
definitely a great interview. You're going to want to check it out. And it's safe to say we at Pinch Rate Prospects are probably the only site that are providing you content, not only with the players themselves, but with their coaches and our Coaches Insight series, which I mentioned earlier. I talked with Jared Lesser's pitching coach at BYU, Michael Bradshaw. Trust me, you read this interview and you're going to learn a lot about pitching. It's so technical. Coach Bradshaw dives into everything you could possibly learn about pitching. So you'll learn a lot from that interview alone. I talked with Austin Wells' manager, Jay Johnson, last week. You'll read more about that later in the week and the next week. I think you'll learn from that. And he talks about how Austin was improving as a catcher. So there's so many different coaches we talked with. I think Ocean Gabonia, who we talked about last week, is one of those raw players as well who, like Rob mentioned in his interview, learned pitching off of YouTube. And it's turned out pretty well so far to get a professional contract. So a lot of good young non-drafted Yankee players to keep an eye on, and there probably might still be more. Remember, this isn't the Wild West. Names could trickle in, and as they do, we'll continue to try to get the best interviews for you, the best coverage on these players here at Pinstripe Prospects, and make sure you check out Alexis' interview. It was really good. So let's wrap it up with a little final thoughts. Again, for those new to the show, it's basically where you could touch on anything you want. It doesn't have to be baseball, as James can attest to, because he usually updates us on who won the latest golf tournament, which I'm probably, who knows, maybe it's different this week. Rob usually provides some fun quote that we end up putting on Twitter at some point. So we should just start with Rob. Rob, what do you got this week?
Nothing incredibly ranty or anything. Just, baseball's back. Let's enjoy it, but let's also be safe. And we need, as a society, we need to start embracing science more, become more scientifically literate, and so we actually understand what's going on in our world. And I hope more people take the time to actually educate themselves on the sciences.
Wear a mask, people. It's not that hard. Wear a mask. Alexis, what do you got?
Not much. I think kind of like Rob said, just let's be excited for baseball. It's an exciting day for baseball and kind of a breather from hearing about everything else going on. That's also important in the world. But baseball fans, I think we're longing for this, just seeing the back and forth battle between the owners and the players. I think it's exciting to see that we finally have an agreement and that, a month from now we're playing baseball.
Matt, what do you got?
Yeah, I'll just to reiterate, I want to put in another plug for my Uni Lions of the Chinese Professional Baseball League. It's been really fun to follow them in the absence of MLB. Chen-Ming Wang's hometown team, and for Yankee fans of a certain age, Chen-Ming Wang was like our ace. He was the guy for a number of years in the mid 2000s. So wrote about this for the site about a month ago, but I will certainly not be abandoning that team once MLB gets going, and early mornings before work will still find me tuning into those games. And I would encourage other Yankee fans that want to adopt another team to jump on that bandwagon.
Or the Japanese league started too, right? So you're seeing like Gerardo Parra, Adam Jones, a couple of former Yankees. I think Brandon Laird's on one of the teams, former Yankees. So the Japanese league is underway too.
Yeah, absolutely. Have yet to find a good way to tune into those games that's available, but definitely looking into that.
And you also had a column up on the site about baseball finally speaking. Why don't you get into that real quick?
Yeah, for sure. What I think a lot of folks around the game have noticed over the last few weeks is that players have begun to speak with a unified voice, and that's something we're not used to seeing in baseball. It's something that we're more used to seeing among football and basketball players. Baseball players aren't known for getting together to speak out on any number of causes on Twitter, other social media, and players have really started to do that, starting with the negotiations, the labor strife, also speaking out on behalf of minor leaguers. And then, of course, with the violence that we've seen from police forces across the nation over the last month, players have even begun to speak out about that and submitting their voices in this fight. Proclaiming that Black Lives Matter. It's something that I've been really heartened to see, and I'm hoping that will continue.
James, are we going golf, James? Or are we going somewhere off the different topic here? What are we thinking?
No, we'll go appropriate. We're back again, as I said in the beginning of the show. I just want to reiterate here something I said earlier. If the Yankees win the World Series, that counts. I don't want to hear any nonsense that it doesn't count. This counts. Unusual circumstances, obviously, for sure, we all know. But just be happy the game's back and just embrace everything that we're about to encounter here. We're going to have an action-packed from July 24th to 23rd when opening day starts until on. We're going to have nothing but action in society. We go from baseball, we enter football season, then we enter the Masters in the fall. We enter all the golf majors in the fall. We cannot take this time that we have coming up for granted. The NBA playoffs. We went from 3 months, 2 months, or however long it was, with absolutely nothing on. Nothing. Everyone was just watching reruns of old sports. We got to be grateful we got live sports back. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, we had the Belmont in New York this past weekend. So that was the first really major sporting event in New York since everything happened. So that was pretty interesting to watch a horse race with no fans, but it was still pretty interesting to watch. I'm going to give my final thought this week on MLB Network's programming from this past weekend. They had a really interesting documentary on Ken Griffey Jr. When we talked about the McGuire Sosa documentary, was, well, where's the piece on Ken Griffey? Well, MLB Network gave you that. I was watching I got up to the part where Griffey was playing with his dad. I found that really cool. Of course, you always see how Griffey changed. Basically, I think the Seattle Mariners aren't where they are today, period, without Ken Griffey Jr. You wonder if that franchise would have stayed afloat. If you don't know the backstory of that, watch MLB Network's other documentary on the 95 Mariners, of course, the one that beat the Yankees in 5 games, but the story how they basically saved the franchise. So you see Griffey's impact on Seattle. You see the relationship with his dad. You also see the parts. I know Joel Sherman, and they wrote about in the New York Post about how Griffey Jr. never played for the Yankees because of something that happened with Billy Martin. So you get to see a little more into that. Makes you wonder what the Yankees would have had Ken Griffey Jr. I know there was a couple of chances they could have had him in the past. But Griffey was one of my childhood favorite players. So every time I get a chance to learn more about Ken Griffey, who I know a lot of people still think if he stayed healthy, he might have broke the record for home runs. But we'll never know. Still a great career. Definitely, if you get a chance to watch that documentary on MLB Network, I'm sure they'll replay it. They're busy playing Fever Pitch during the day where their sport comes back. As much as I like Fever Pitch, I'm not sure. Yes, it's a hot take. A person that writes about the Yankees, their favorite movie is about a guy who likes the Boston Red Sox. But yes, I do like that movie. But that's my final thought for this week. A lot we dove into. I want to thank everybody that's tuned in. I'm sure we'll dive into more extensively on a couple topics as the week goes on. We want to give you a little bit of lay of the land on what's gone on with everything that's happened today in Major League Baseball. So I'm going to give each of our people on the show a chance to promote their social media and tell you what they're talking about, what they got planned, things like that. Matt, how can they follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, absolutely. So my Twitter handle is mcjarrell14. I'm currently not the most active Twitter user just because, this is definitely an aside that I do. My day job is in the education field, but I do retweet all the articles I write for the site. And I'm hoping to, as baseball season resumes, to get into more analysis and providing some more commentary on Twitter as well.
Alexis, I know you've been one of the big helpers of our social media, so feel free to promote yours and what you're doing with the site's social media as well.
You can find me on any social media site, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. All my usernames are pretty easy, at Alexis Farinacci. Keep it pretty general. Like everybody, I retweet everything that the site posts for the most part. I try to retweet our other writers as well and things that they post on their personal pages. Outside of that, you'll probably see some weightlifting videos as I do compete competitively in Olympic weightlifting. So I stay pretty active on social media with that, as well as I also do a little coverage of the Mets for Mets minors as well. So a little bit of Yankees, a little bit of Mets, some weightlifting. But yeah, definitely go follow me.
Good variety there. James, what about you? I know you'll be probably tweeting about the Travelers this week, but feel free.
For sure. But give me a follow on Twitter at O'ConnellNY. We'll be tweeting more. Baseball's back, so follow me there.
Yeah, I'm sure you had a lot of fun. This week was like 40 players within 5 shots of the lead, so everybody was in that one.
Yep.
You can follow me on Twitter at Rickinator555. I host my show Kicking Keeler over on Full Press Radio. Do a couple other things as well, but baseball, any kind of sports, basically to follow me there. Again, at Rickinator. That's R-A-C-K, letter I, Nader like in Terminator, and 3 5s. You can follow us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros, Instagram, Facebook, the whole 9 yards. We're everywhere. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. We hope we want you to rate the show. We hope it's 5 stars. We want to hear from you. What do you like about the show? What you don't like? What guests you want to hear as we get set for baseball to come back? Please, we want to hear from you. And, of course, subscribe anywhere else you get your podcasts. Chances are we are probably on there. Got some great articles on the site. Of course, that Dugout membership program, always key. You want to check out some of the premium articles. You'll need our Dugout membership program. And trust me, you won't regret signing up for it. Again, use the promo code IMissBaseball, and you get to try it free for 30 days. Then you can figure it out for yourself if you're enjoying it. And you get great interviews and features and all the premium access you could possibly want about the Yankees organization. That's really what you got to do. So I think you'll really enjoy checking out all those articles. So thanks for all for tuning in. We're glad we hit 20 episodes. Hopefully around for 20 more and way beyond that. But we definitely enjoy all the support that we've been getting through the 20 episodes. So for Rob, for James, for Matt, for Alexis, I'm Ricky Keeler saying have a great rest of your week. And we'll see you back here next week when we're going to get toward July and baseball slowly coming back. Until then, have a good week, everybody, and stay safe.
Later.